Morning. Morning, everybody. Welcome to Sonoma Mountain Zen Center. It's great to be here this morning with everybody. See some familiar faces and also some new ones, so welcome. And if you're not new, it might be just new to me. I don't know everybody yet. My name is Shindo, Kevin Souza. I've been a student of Kwang Roshi here going on about 15 years. I live in Berkeley with my wife, Kate, and my 16-year-old son, Kevin. I've been practicing Zen now going on 16 years. That number is easy for me to keep track of because I started practicing when my son was born. I was living in Phoenix at the time and had a falling out with his mom. Our relationship ended, and I realized that my behaviors were hurting those closest to me and that I needed to change. My mother had been out for a visit during that time and had left behind a copy of Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. She had a bunch of books with her, mostly self-help books, but for some reason this one stayed behind and it caught my eye. And really what caught my eye was the picture of Suzuki Roshi on the back. And it's the same picture that's on the altar here in the Zendo. And what struck me was he had this look on his face of almost, he looked tired, like he had done the work. Like he has almost a 5 o'clock shadow, not a great big glowing smile like the rest of the books that she was carrying with her, making promises. I think The Secret was one of them. There was other books like that. But I just, at that point, I wasn't interested in an easy way out. I think I needed to hear kind of something more than empty promises in some of those books. I think that I was kind of exposed to. I grew up Catholic, and I had been not practicing Catholicism for some time. In the 90s, I grew up in Boston in the 90s. There was a lot of controversy with the priests in the Boston area. So my family kind of distanced ourselves from that. So needless to say, I was looking for something. I didn't know what. I had no real exposure to Buddhism other than the Dharma Bumps by Jack Kerouac, or Zen Arcade from Husker Du, punk rock album in the 90s. Maybe Everything Zen by Bush. That was about it. So I had no idea. And Dharma Bums really isn't, I mean, it's a great novel, it's a great book, but it's not really, I don't think, a good entrance into Zen practice. So after reading, I should say while reading Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, it was almost like I knew intuitively what he was saying. Like I had already known this to be true, but never heard it in words or intellectualized in a way like that. So none of it really was surprising to me. It felt very welcoming, and really opened a lot of doors for me in my life and exploring Zen practice. So I found sitting groups in Phoenix. They were Rinzai sitting groups, which is a different, it's like another sect of Zen, similar but different. We practice Soto Zen here. So I had been practicing in Phoenix for a while. My son and his mom moved up to the Sacramento area, and I was able to get closer to them in Carson City. with the same job that I had, which was about 2 hours away in the summertime. I learned in the wintertime, Carson City to Sacramento, going across the pass could take anywhere from 8 hours to never getting there, which I found out. So, um, but while I was in Carson, I wanted to continue my Zen practice. So I started a sitting group. It was in a non-denominational church. I printed up flyers and put them in coffee shops and yoga shops, and people started coming, and I had some cushions, and we would listen to the Zen Mind Beginner's Mind audiobook. After sitting for a half hour, we would just listen to a chapter. And needless to say, there was another sitting group in Carson City at the time. A man named Richard had a beautiful Zendo in his attic, and we kind of got together and had a pretty good sangha in Carson City for a couple of years. Nyose came over. This was in 2008, 2009, and Kashin, and helped us lead a one-day sitting, which we had about, I'd say, 15 people at. So it was I don't know if you've ever been to Carson City, but it's not, it doesn't exactly strike me as a hotbed for Zen. But at one point there was a spark there. Hopefully there still is. But Richard was a student of Kwang Roshi, and I would come over with Richard for weekends, Saturday communities like this, sessions, whatever we could. We would drive over on our free time and spend time here on the mountain. And I established a relationship with Roshi and the Sangha here, and I've been practicing here ever since. So in 2009, I received Jukai. In August of 21, I served as the Shuso, or the head student for Summer Ango here. And one thing that sticks out about that experience for me, I remember clearly the day that I was asked to serve as Shuso. It was February of 2021. We were still pretty thick in the pandemic. Don't even think I had my first vaccination shot yet. There was a lot of unknowns in the world. I was dealing with a lot of anxiety, panic attacks, stress. I was just at a very, very tough stage in my life. And I had pulled up to the park to play basketball with my son, and I opened up my email and I saw the invitation, and I just got pale, and just this rush of anxiety. My chest tightened, and he looked at me and he's just like, what's wrong, Dad? Like I received the worst news in my life, but it really wasn't. There was a lot that I had to put together or have covered in order for me to spend 30 days here on the mountain with a full-time job, shared custody with my son, my wife, a lot of responsibilities. A lot had to come really in place, and people had to sacrifice in order for me to do that. And I'm very grateful and thankful that they did. Work was very accommodating, and support from my son's mom and my wife. Without that couldn't have happened. And learned a lot about myself in those 30 days here. Hadn't been to the Zendo here at Sonoma Mountain in over a year because of COVID. And this was kind of like the first kind of real big event, if I remember right, that, post, I don't want to say post-COVID, but kind of the reopening. So I was in a position to where I had to lead by example, but at the same time relearn the forms and a lot that was um, that came with this position. So um, there was a lot of overcoming fear and anxiety, and a lot of it was just showing up. I just got to the point where if it goes wrong, it's gonna go bad, and it's not gonna be the end of the world. Just keep moving forward, correct, and do the best you can. And a lot of that, helped me through that experience. Many mistakes were made. I don't remember any of them, but and I hope and I bet you nobody else does either. And that's the beauty of it. It was a beautiful time here. Um, a lot of great relationships were made, and very grateful that I was able to do that. In February of this year, I was ordained as a priest, and I really had no expectations of becoming a Zen priest. Um, the word priest is something I'm still uh, not super comfortable with. I don't really, when I think of a priest, I think of a Catholic priest and confessions and ceremonies, funerals. I was an altar boy. I used to have to help with weddings and funerals, and it's just a term that I'm not super comfortable with. So I'm working on that. People ask me, what does it mean to be a Zen priest? What do you do? Um, I'm still learning that as well. I don't perform ceremonies, funerals, weddings. To me, right now, it means a deeper commitment to my teacher, Kwang Roshi, to this sangha, to the lineage, the Soto Zen lineage, to the teachings of Buddha, um, and to fulfill that for the rest of my life. To just show up, to continue to show up, and you know, see what happens. I don't know exactly what a Zen priest does other than that right now. So I won't be taking any confessions anytime soon. Um, but I think it's different for everybody. I think you'll get a different answer from everybody on that. What is a Zen priest? Uh, to Kashin, to Koten, to Jundo. I think each one may have a different answer on what it means to them, um, or a similar answer to me. I don't know. So one thing I'm kind of working on myself in my practice, which unfortunately hadn't really got comfortable with today, is really putting teachings into my own words. I really struggle with reading a sutra or a passage in a book and um, comprehending it and putting it into my own words to where um, it would make sense and you know add value in a situation like this. So today I'm going to read, um, and what I'm going to read is from a book, and it's a very interesting book. It's titled Udambara, and Rick Sparks gave this to me in my closing ceremony, at the closing ceremony of Ango 21, as when I served as Shuso. And it says in the front cover, summer of 1978, a publication of the Minnesota Zen Meditation Center. Special edition of Udambara was hand set and printed on handmade paper in limited edition of 400 copies. And there are two talks from Dainin Katagiri Roshi. And does anybody know what Udambara is? Has anybody heard that term, Udambara, or know what an Udambara is?
I believe that a crest is the Umbara flower.
It's a flower, yeah, yeah. So
only blooms every
3,000.
something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So it's in Buddhism, the flower was said to bloom only once every 3,000 years, and thus came to symbolize events of rare occurrence, such as the advent of a wheel-turning king or a Buddha. And it's like a thin kind of lotus flower, I believe. You can look up a picture of them, obviously on Google, but I had not heard that term, a sacred flower that comes from the Buddhist realms. The flower's name comes from Sanskrit and means auspicious flower from heaven. So, and the talk that I'm going to read today, Katagiri Roshi is talking about Jijuyu Zanmai, or Jijuyu Samadhi. And it's the second section of the first part of Dogen's Bendoa, or the endeavor of the way, from the Shobogenzo. The term Ji means self or in oneself. Ju means to receive or accept, and Yu means to work or function in a concentrated union. And Zanmai is a Japanese term for samadhi, which is focused meditation in the practice of Zazen. So the following is a talk given by Dainin Katagiri Roshi on Jijuyu Samadhi. Dogen Zenji teaches us that there is a wonderful way to live, taught by Buddha Tathagata and called wondrous Dharma. It is transferred from generation to generation, from Buddha to Buddha, from patriarch to patriarch. It is the authentic tradition of Buddha Dharma according to Dogen's understanding of Buddha's teaching. This tradition does not depend on a particular scripture, but only on Jijuyu Samadhi. In the term Jijuyu, Ji means in oneself, Ju is to receive, and Yu is to use. Thus the term Jijuyu means to receive and use the joy of awakening in oneself. It is concentration or the state of merging into one. When you become one with Zazen, so that there is no discrimination between you and Zazen, that is called Samadhi. Jijuyu is a different expression than Samadhi, but the meaning is actually the same. Perhaps you remember the three stages of thinking or understanding according to Zen. The first stage of understanding is mountains are mountains. The second stage is mountains are not mountains. And the third stage is mountains are mountains. The first stage is the usual common sense understanding. Strictly speaking, this means that everything is seen conceptually because it is seen as existing separately. So it's the dualistic me podium, cushion. So that's kind of what the first step is. The problem, practicer, zazen, cushion, room, the noise of a passing car, these all exist completely apart from each other. The problem with this form of understanding is that dogmatism is always associated with it. One aspect of dogmatism is heretical belief in a real personality, belief in a self, and belief in what belongs to the self. It means that one strongly believes the existence of body-mind to be solid or real, as if one could resort to it. Dogmatism also appears as prejudice or one-sided views, such as belief that the world is permanent, or that it is impermanent, or that the Tathagata exists after death, or that he doesn't exist, and so forth. Also, there are false views, especially those which ignore the existence of the triple treasure, Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The law of causation and the triple world, past, present, and future. Egotism, an excessive sense of ideology, is another way that dogmatism manifests itself. And finally, there's the discipline for the sake of saving oneself rather than others, concentrating on oneself in order to be happy. At this first stage of understanding, everything becomes something to be discussed at the conscious level. You may enjoy dealing with life at this level. However, your daily living is not a matter of discussion alone, but also a matter of how to deal with life directly, putting aside discussion about things seen intellectually and conceptually. So you cannot understand anything just with this first stage of understanding. It is a way of understanding which is very cold. No relationship between people or between people, trees, birds, anything. In the second stage, mountains are not mountains. This means open your eyes to real reality. Cushion, zazen, how do they exist? When you see zazen intellectually, zazen seems to exist alone, separate from trees, cars, and so forth. When you see zazen in this way, you begin to hate not only zazen, but yourself as a practitioner. But zazen does not exist alone. Zazen exists with the cushion, practitioner, sun, trees, rivers, emotion, heredity, knowledge, flowers. Minneapolis. Broadly speaking, with the universe. This is the Buddha's teaching of interdependence. When you see zazen, you have to see zazen and the cushions and the weather and the noise and the cars interconnected, interpenetrated with all sentient beings. You have to see everything. At this stage of understanding, your vision becomes very broad, universal. Finally, you reach the third stage. Mountains are mountains. Zazen is zazen. You must plunge into it and deal with zazen as a whole, undivided from the world around you. It means that lively activity as oneness with zazen, practitioner, cushion, trees, birds, and so forth. This is not a matter of discussion. This is a matter of how to act directly, right here, right now. Just do it. But be aware that just to do it does not mean to go crazy over it or to be infatuated with it. Just do it means to do it with wholeheartedness. This is what is called shikan. Shikan allows you to awaken to everything all around, whereas infatuation prevents you from realizing that anything but the object of your infatuation. Consider the problem of old age and death. According to Buddha's teaching, old age and death are the last of the 12 links of causation. How can you understand death? It's a very interesting question, for which one has no definitive answer. At the first stage of understanding death, It is a matter of discussion. But since nobody has an answer to the question of old age and death, you will finally come to realize that death is just to die. It means death is a matter of acting directly here and now. This is the third stage. How can death come to be? It does not exist alone. Death exists by means of life. How can life exist? By means of being. How can being exist? By means of grasping. How can grasping exist? By means of craving. Grasping exists. How can craving exist? By means of feeling. How can feeling exist? By means of contact. How can contact exist? By means of the sense fields. The sense fields exist by means of name and form. Name and form exists by means of consciousness. Consciousness exists by means of formative forces. Formative forces exist by means of ignorance. Ignorance is here, before you were born, without any choice. These are the 12 links of causation. Thus, the practice of death is due to the presence of birth or life. The presence of death is due to the presence of the universe, interconnected and interpenetrated with all things. Death is completely beyond what you have understood. Death is something so vast that you cannot attach to it. Finally, you realize the third stage. Death is to die, that is all. When the time comes to die, all you have to do is just die with your mouth shut. Deal with it. Just to die is to handle death as a whole, undivided from the universe. Life, being, craven, passion, all sentient beings. Dogen Zenji says that you must do just Zazen for your whole life, apart from reading Buddhist scriptures and apart from thinking about koans, apart from any expectations at all. That Zazen is real Zazen, spinning in dynamism, interconnected with the universe. In this Zazen, there is total realization of the presence of cars, trees, weather, Minneapolis, universe. All sentient beings are completely absorbed into Zazen itself. Then at that time, your Zazen becomes very stable and death becomes very stable. This is called Jijuyu Samadhi, the manifestation of simplicity, the wonderful way to live taught by Buddha Tathagata. Ordinarily, human activity involves many things: advantages and disadvantages, success and failure, loss and gain, progress and not progress. For example, if you practice art, you must see progress in your art. Otherwise, you cannot be a great artist. But in doing Zazen, you focus on the activity itself, completely beyond a sense of success or failure, advantage or disadvantage. Zazen is a very pure sense of human activity. If you don't have such a pure sense of human activity, general human activity is filled with problems and confusion, because general human activity is always relative to a particular time and circumstances. It seems to me that you clean your life with mud. You try to clean general activity with general activity. That doesn't work. The more you try, the more you realize that there is something muddy and you are confused. So we have to sink to the bottom of the ocean and experience pure practice, pure activity, even if only once. This is Jijuyu Samadhi. Very simple. Zazen is Zazen. All you have to do is deal with Zazen when you are confronted with it. If you have a certain idea about Zazen, such as imagining that Zazen will bring you enlightenment, or make your life harmonious, you just start to be critical towards your activity. Then just throw away your ideas. Just maintain a pure sense of practice. When you do Zazen, deal with it carefully, taking care of the body and mind and emotions and all other circumstances around Zazen. Zazen includes the countless numbers of all sentient beings. And yet you have to stand up in the midst of Zazen. You experience many things which come up: pain, emotions, irritations, agitations, hatred, and so forth. It's very natural. It's not something awful. If you experience pain, immediately you believe that something is awful, but it's not. It's a good sign that your body is working in balance. If you do Zazen and you don't experience pain, that's terrible. You would not be a human being. You'd maybe be a stone or a tree. Even a Zen master who has practiced for 30 years feels pain during Zazen. If you feel emotions, that is also a good sign. Pay careful attention to your emotions. So although Zazen is surrounded by myriad living things, you have to deal with Zazen directly. How do you do this? You can't do it randomly or you will be confused. So do it wholeheartedly with careful attention. Arrange your daily living. Make your rooms clean and quiet. Wear neat clothes. Make your mind calm and then sit. From beginning to end, all you have to do is Zazen as Jijuyu Samadhi without depending upon a certain discipline or scripture. Dogen Zenji says that this is the wonderful way of life taught by Buddha Tathagata, the authentic tradition of Buddha Dharma. This is what is transmitted from generation to generation, from Buddha to Buddha, from patriarch to patriarch. This is the touchstone by which you experience who you are, because this is the universal way of life open to everybody, no matter who they are. You may be a terrible person, or you may be a clever person. It doesn't matter. You can do it. And the person who practices Jijuyu Samadhi is called Buddha. So I thought that was a really great talk. I've been studying the Jijuyu Zanmai Samadhi, and really just kind of going back to the basics of just my Zazen practice. Sitting in the morning, chanting, bowing, and just trying to find a good rhythm with that, keeping a clean space, and just trying to stick to the basics and really just get to the mat. It can be, my life can, I can get so caught up with work, social activities, parenting, all the busyness of life, and it's easy to go a few days or a week and not sit, and that really has an impact on me when I don't. I don't handle conflict as well. I don't handle my emotions as well. If things are going really good, I get attached to that. If things are going really bad, I also get attached to that. I don't understand. I lose that sense of impermanence in feelings. So it's been very important for me to just get back to the basics, beginner's mind, and just focus on Zazen, chanting, and my bowing practice. So Rick, thank you again for this wonderful gift. If anybody would like that talk, I can try to photocopy it or have the office photocopy it, and we can post it and share it. I have a few minutes left, so what I'm going to do is I think I'm just going to read Jijuyu Zanmai from the Shobogenzo. It is the second part of Benbo, and it's not very long. It's only a couple pages, and it starts. Now, all ancestors and all Buddhas who uphold the Buddha Dharma have made it the true path of enlightenment to sit upright, practicing in the midst of self-fulfilling samadhi. Those who attained enlightenment in India and China followed this way. It was done so because teachers and disciples personally transmitted this excellent method as the essence of the teaching. In the authentic tradition of our teaching, it is said that this directly transmitted straightforward Buddha Dharma is the unsurpassable of the unsurpassable. From the first time you meet a master, without engaging in incense, offering, bowing, chanting Buddha's name, repentance, or reading scriptures, you should just wholeheartedly sit and thus drop away body and mind. When even for a moment you express the Buddha's seal in the three actions by sitting upright in samadhi, the whole phenomenal world becomes the Buddha's seal, and the entire sky turns into enlightenment. Because of this, all Buddha Tathagatas, as the original source, increase their Dharma bliss and renew their magnificence in the awakening of the way. Furthermore, all beings in the 10 directions and 6 realms, including the 3 lower realms, at once obtain pure body and mind, realize the state of great emancipation, and manifest the original face. At this time, all things realize correct awakening, myriad objects partake in the Buddha body, and sitting upright under the Bodhi tree, you immediately leap beyond the boundary of awakening. At this moment, you turn the unsurpassably great Dharma wheel and expound the profound wisdom, ultimate and unconditioned. Because such broad awakening resonates back to you and helps you inconceivably, you will in Zazen unmistakably drop away body and mind, cutting off the various defiled thoughts from the past and realize the essential Buddha Dharma. Thus, you will raise up the Buddha activity at the innumerable practice places of Buddha Tathagata everywhere. Cause everyone to have the opportunity of ongoing Buddhahood and vigorously uplift the ongoing Buddha Dharma. Because earth, grass, trees, walls, tiles, and pebbles all engage in Buddha activity, those who receive the benefit of wind and water caused by them are inconceivably helped by the Buddha's guidance, splendid and unthinkable, and awaken intimately to themselves. Those who receive these water and fire benefits spread the Buddha's guidance based on the original awakening. Because of this, all those 28 who live with you and speak with you obtain and will obtain endless Buddha virtue and will unroll widely inside and outside the entire universe, the endless, unremitting, unthinkable, unnameable Buddha Dharma. All this, however, does not appear with perception, because it is unconstructedness and stillness. It is immediate realization. If practice and realization were two things, as it appears to an ordinary person, each could be recognized separately. But what can be met with recognition is not realization itself, because realization is not reached with a deluded mind. In stillness, mind and object merge in realization and go beyond enlightenment. Nevertheless, because you are in the state of self-fulfilling samadhi, or jijuyu, without disturbing its quality or moving a particle, you extend the Buddha's great activity in the incomparably profound and subtle teaching. Grass, trees, and lands which are embraced by this teaching together radiate a great light and endlessly expound the inconceivable profound Dharma. Grass, trees, and walls bring forth the teaching for all beings, common people as well as sages. And they, in accord, extend this Dharma for the sake of grass, trees, and walls. Thus the realm of self-awakening and awakening others invariably holds the mark of realization with nothing lacking, and realization itself is manifested without ceasing for a moment. This being so, The zazen of even one person at one moment accords with all things and fully resonates through all time. Thus, in the past, present, and future of the limitless universe, this zazen carries on the Buddha's teaching endlessly. Each moment of zazen is equally wholeness of practice, equally wholeness of realization. This is not only practice while sitting, it's like a hammer striking emptiness. Before and after, its exquisite peal permeates everywhere. How can it be limited to just this moment? Hundreds of things all manifest original practice from the original face. It is impossible to measure. Know that even if all Buddhas in the 10 directions, as innumerable as the sands of the Ganges, exert their strength and with the Buddha's wisdom try to measure the merit of one person's zazen, they will not be able to fully comprehend it. Thank you.